Hi class. So we're going to get started with our review of the character sketches. And this is the first part in our project that we're going to be working on throughout the class. It's a character design. And what you were doing in this particular assignment is or part of the project, is you were picking one of the characters from the list, and you're going to be using that character and the character's name as a concept throughout the assignment. And then you're creating 4 potential ideas, sketches for your character using common objects. Okay. And when you're working on this throughout the project, you will find that it's a fairly organic process. That here, you have some great ideas, and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to work on sketch 2, and then you get to our next week, and you think, I want to make a few changes here. I think this object would be better for an arm, or this would be better for a leg or a tail, or whatever it is that you're working with, and that is a very good way to work on all of the parts of this project, is to be flexible and know that it's an organic process. So don't be surprised if your sketch, maybe it stays very similar to the way it is now, the one you end up with, or maybe you join some sketches together and you kind of develop it, or maybe it changes quite radically. Um, and that's totally okay. It's all about kind of creating a really good character at the end, and creating something that fits the concept, whatever character you chose, that you somehow developed that idea. And yeah, and a good finished product. We are going to be working with photographs of common objects for our next phase and throughout the rest of the class. And a lot of what you develop is going to be based on what you can find. You may find a really great object, but you can't quite get a good photograph of it, so you decide, hey, I'm going to change my object. And again, that's okay to do that, and I really encourage you to do that. Okay, so we're going to get started. Okay, Paige. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, you've got some really interesting ideas here, built with objects, which is really great. Um, I like the way you're thinking here and putting things together. One of the things that I think is the challenge, and also the really fascinating part of this project, is how to take a bunch of objects and turn them into a character and make them appear that they are living and breathing and they can move. That when you look at them, but that doesn't mean that the character needs to look human. It can look like some kind of other creature. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it. But these all look good. Let me just go to your next one. I like the way you've labeled them too. It's not, and this assignment, I should have mentioned this in my initial comments, is that it doesn't matter if you can draw or not for this assignment. A lot of designers have fairly rudimentary drawing skills, but they just sort of develop a style that they're able to communicate, and certainly labeling things works. But, I think everybody, even if you can't necessarily draw that well realistically, you can communicate, and that's all you need to really be doing in these sketches. These look great too. Very nice. Yeah, all of these are great ideas. So I would probably just pick the one that, or the ideas that you like the most. I think they'll all work really well. This one here, I love the barbed wire, and this could work. It really depends. Just something. This is just one of the features of Photoshop, is that the more delicate, like if you, a lot of wires and thin, like really thin things, cables, wires, they can be hard to select in Photoshop, like to make a clean selection. But you'll notice that it's a good process to work with um, later on. So if you like this idea of barbed wire, you might be able to find some barbed wire that's really kind of more solid. Maybe a lot of overlapping that could work. Um, but I think you've got a really good handle on this, and I think you're ready to go to the next phase of the assignment, if whenever you're ready. Okay, Chris. Yeah, food is a great one. And so are you going with Flippin' Food Fran or Flippin' Food Fred? Is that the one you're going with? Just label it somewhere. You can also put it in your post. But that's definitely a great idea. So in terms of your sketches, it's a little hard to see some of these sketches because of um, the shadow falling on your sketch. Can you see that? So some of your sketch is light and some of it's dark. and it's a little hard to see them. So I would rephotograph these. Um, so let me just sort of, and just make sure to, I would also label your sketches as well, just to, like you've done here. I think this is the one you've labeled, just so that we can tell what they are. So I'm going to talk about this one. I think this is the one I can see the easiest. Yeah, waffle, that sounds like a great idea. Monocle, tuxedo. Is that a grape for a foot? Um, yeah, let's see if we can see that. Yeah, I think that's, so yeah, just label all the different parts. Make sure you're just working with objects. And it's great that you have 5 sketches. So it's, again, it's a little hard for, I think you're on the right track here. If you, for the final submission, just kind of clean up your presentation in terms of rephotographing it, add any labels that you need, and I think you'll be in good shape for the next assignment. And I think probably any one of these characters is gonna, these designs is going to work. Okay, Leah. So let's see here. So which of the sketches that did you create for this assignment? Um, let's see, our list at the top here, so let's see if we can figure that out. Rockin' Rhapsody Roy or Roxanne Rhapsody Rita, Garbage Dump Dan or Garbage Dump Dawn. I don't think it's Flippin' Food Fran. Terrible Toys Todd or Terrible Toys Tanya. Garden, I don't think it's Garden Glitter Grace. So maybe Toys Garbage Dump Dan. Uh, Maybe Rockin' Rhapsody Rita or Roy. Is that what? So yeah, just label it. It's always good to, have that really solidified at this point, in terms of um, what you're doing and how we can provide some feedback for that. But I would say that you've got a good handle on how to create the character. I like the idea of, different ways of moving, like the rolling records. Yeah, why not? Your character can roll, it can hop, it can fly, it can walk, it can do anything really as that you can think of. Yeah, all of these are really good. Um, what I would just say is when you're working with a lot of kind of technical stuff, like gadgetry and things like that, think about how it's going to fit together as forms. Sometimes, certain types of like things like stereos and stuff can have a lot of detail on them, like kind of complexity, like knobs and dials and things like that, which can make them not very form-like, like they don't have a lot of volume because they get flattened out. So just keep that in mind as you're working with choosing things, is that, to pick things that are very, very as simple as possible, not a lot of writing or details, because that way your character is going to work the best. Okay, so those are the revisions. I guess the main thing here is, um, in your final submission, make sure to talk about what character you've chosen, or label it on your sketch, either way. Okay, yeah, I think so many people feel like they cannot be illustrators because they maybe can't draw like a certain style of drawing or a certain kind of realism. But if you start looking at illustrations, especially in magazines or newspapers, um, like I read the New York Times every day, and I notice that there's all kinds of really, I have a link somewhere, email me if you want me to dig it up somewhere. It's been for a while since I've looked at it, but I was collecting the portfolios of illustrators just based on like, I think it was just the New York Times, little illustrations I saw. And because I wanted to show students, hey, there's all kinds of different styles of illustrators out there. And there's just, you don't necessarily have to do things realistically to be a good illustrator, in the sense of like a certain way of doing it. There's so many different fun kind of and innovative ways that people do things. Okay, so let me see here. Yeah, I would just say that for yours, this looks good. I would just like this looks like a camera, yeah, and maybe are these cardboard boxes? Maybe. So you might want to just label what these different arms or legs here. I'm not quite sure what they are at this point, and labeling is just fine. That's a great way to communicate. Same thing for this. I would just label what are all these arms, what are the different parts, what's this going to be made out of. This looks like an Etch-a-Sketch to me, right? And maybe a toy sword. So just label the other parts. Same thing with this. Yeah, you've got some cute ideas here. The main thing is to just make sure that all the parts are identifiable as common objects, in which I think you're doing here. You've got lots of different forms and shapes for the different what's happening. So I'm kind of just based on it, I'm kind of leaning towards one without knowing what the objects are, just the forms, maybe two. This one's so cute, but it almost seems like the whole thing is made out of maybe one object with just a few little parts sort of added, which it's always better to have it kind of more like built up. This one's cute too. It almost looks like it's going to fly. Okay, so that's what you need to do here is label the objects. Okay, Latara, let's see here. So, okay, so this is a, is that soil? Soil. Yeah, okay, let's see here. Garden. So you're doing Garden Glitter Grace. Garden Grace, Garden Glitter. Yeah, that's close enough. It's actually Garden Glitter Grace, but you've got the idea here. Okay, yeah, you've got a lot of different ideas here. Make sure that every part is has some feature, like when you do features on a face, that would actually be created by objects. Now, something to keep in mind, this is probably going to come up with a few other folks, so just a general comment. I don't know, features, adding little features can sometimes work. Sometimes you don't even need them. Like, what is this head going to be made out of? It almost looks like maybe an acorn or something. So label that. That can actually operate really beautifully as a head without having to identify it further, as long as you have enough other kind of clues within the character for what it is which you do. Okay, so that's what you want to fix here. And dirt, that could work. We'll see. That's a cute idea. Leave it for now. And leaves. Yeah, these are great idea roots. Same thing here. I would either find some objects you can use for the face, or alternately, um, just take the face off at this point. I don't think you really need it. Same for this one. Same for this one. I would say that just based on kind of my past experience with the characters, probably this one or this one will probably work best. Um, this one could work again once you take the face off or relabel it. That could really help in terms of identifying it as a character design. Um, this one, I think sometimes what happens is when you don't have when you just have a torso with some things coming from it, it can start making it hard to be an object, like our character, I should say. So sometimes you need to actually use this as the torso and then build an extra head, or figure out, how you could maybe make a really cute face here with objects. But I think your sketches, I don't think you need to necessarily develop your sketches anymore at this point. We don't necessarily expect that all of our sketches are going to work. We're just looking for one good idea. But what I would do here, though, is to change either take the faces off or turn them into, redraw them with objects. Okay, Tiffany, Garden Glitter Grace. Yeah, she's always such a nice character. Let's see here. Eyes, seeds, lips, daisy, flower. Yeah, yeah, you've got the idea here, making everything an object, which is exactly right. Um, I think that's one of the main things because that's what we're going to be doing, with um, the next phase is collecting those objects for the character. Ooh, I like this one. This is corn, broccoli. I like this one. This is a really interesting one. Just in terms of all of the different vegetables, I can really see that coming to life. And let's see here. Spider lily, flowers, stems. Yeah, this one's interesting too. I think my favorite at this point is um, maybe this one. I can just see, how it's going to work. Um, This one's cute too. I think they're all really nice, and you've done a good job with this. So, um, you know, I think you're ready to move to the next part of the assignment, which is choosing one of the characters and finding objects for it, photographs in milestone 2. Just the one thing I would just say though, and this you won't have to worry about this for the next assignment, but you may, find that having a face with a lot, like with very detailed little features, may be a little challenging in Photoshop when we get to starting to put it together. So be flexible with that. I've found that just a flower or whatever you have for the head. I think all of your heads will read as heads, and you don't necessarily you might not need to have any features, or maybe just eyes, or something like that. Okay, good job with this. Hi, Brooke. Yeah, Flippin' Food Fran is a really great character for working with the forms of food, and I think you did a really nice job here. And your presentations are very clear. This is exactly, you can just see that if anybody, I think, can make a good presentation as long as you just spend a little time. Doesn't necessarily require, terrific drawing skills, but just showing what you're doing, drawing slowly, good line weight, labeling things. That's really all it takes. But these are, yeah, good. Ooh, this is cool too. I love the idea of the candy canes as little hooks. This has kind of got a little bit of an edge to it. Really interesting. Um, this one's nice too. It's a lot more sort of, I like that you're kind of capturing movement in all of yours, which I think is really good, especially as we continue working for everybody, as we continue working on the characters and actually then starting to put them together. It's always really nice to kind of have them doing something, whether it's, jumping or, turning or, even just walking towards us or away from us. Those are all things that will just add so much to your character. Yeah, these all look really great. Nice job. So I would just pick the character that you like the most, you want to develop, and again, just keep in mind all of my previous comments that you might be able to apply regarding um, being flexible with your character, thinking about how maybe your character could work with just a head if you find later on as you're adding the features that it gets a little bit too crowded. But yeah, you're ready to move on. Hey, Russell, yeah, that's exactly the point you made, which is how do you make it into like a human form? Or I would just say like a living form, because it can be, human or animal looking. But that exactly is really, I think, the thing that will bring your character to life, is that you're thinking about how it would be a living organism. Um, yeah, this looks really good. I like this with the little feet at the bottom. So it's going to kind of roll around. I think that's going to be great. I like the movement you've added here just to give it a sense of how it's going to work. This one too. So well, I like this one. So just like something I've noticed after doing this class quite a lot is that kind of the more there's like sometimes you can have a thinner body here, like here, thinner arms and legs, but I have found that it's sometimes easier to work with the idea of kind of like heavier torsos, like, or a midsection, because it gives it visual weight, and then when you put backgrounds behind it and such, it'll really have a, a clear presence. So I would probably go with this one, maybe this one. I really like, for something about some reason about this one is so blocky. It's very interesting. But again, those that can change depending upon the objects that you find. But yeah, 1, 3, and 4 as well. Okay, yeah, these are great ideas, and look forward to seeing what you come up with next. Rachel, so Garden Glitter Grace. Yeah, okay, let me see here. Jack in a pulpit. Oh, that's an interesting one. I like the kind of shape. It sort of gives it like this really interesting sort of head-like thing. Does the Jack in the pulpit have little eyes on it? Or might you need to add some objects like to make eyes, or do you need eyes? Um, yeah. Yeah, I think all of these definitely on the right track. Oh, I like the idea of a skirt. I think that's really cute. Um, well, that one's interesting too with the flower. Yeah, I like kind of like the sort of shapes of this one. Um, Nightshade leaf, bird seed. Um, and yeah, again, same thing, is bird seed going to be the eyes and mouth? I think so, right? If you, again, just, you've heard my comments now. Do you need to have features? I think that sometimes you actually don't. So I would just probably, I think all these are great ideas. I love the idea of kind of like the skirts and the different sort of, this one's interesting, just the different body types you have. Yeah, this one's interesting too. So this is a cabbage. I love the idea of a big cabbage. Um, you might think about for this one how it's going to, like, maybe would it have little feet down here that it kind of wobbles along on, or you know, how will it move? Maybe it'll roll along the cabbage bottom. That could be interesting. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So maybe just either take off the features. Oh, that's bird seed. So it looks like it's all bird seed. Yeah, so I would just leave it for now. But just again, keep in mind that maybe you don't need to have features for your character. If if the head, oftentimes a round or kind of globular head, will just start reading as a head. Yeah, Christopher, I know the name has um, changed, hasn't it? So maybe we can get that changed. Adobe Acrobat Pro is now DC. I wish they would have kept the same name. I don't know why they changed it, but they did. Um, okay, so yeah, you've got some really interesting ideas here. This is going to be, let's see, I think you've got, it's Terrible Toys Todd, right? Yeah, I think so. All of your sketches, they're all using objects. And what I would say is, mm, to, um, when you're developing this, think about how you're going to really get a sense of it being a character um, that is living, and like I think this, to me, this one maybe comes closest. This one is like, at least at this phase, it's so detailed, as you put a lot of work in here, which is great. But kind of think about how all the objects can sort of separate out into parts rather than kind of a lot of objects, kind of a collection of objects. That's always the tricky part. And I think this one's starting to come closest because we're getting a sense of a head. We have like some limbs coming out. This is how it's going to motor around. This is the bottom. This is the torso. This one started, I like the idea of this, like almost like skis, but I would sort of think about, again, just like a little bit more, it's getting pretty close. This one again is a little bit, it has a feeling of again, a bit of a collection of things. Now, how do you get the feeling of things being living? One of the ways is symmetry. Like if you look at symmetry, whether it's animals or even plants, and people, there's a sense of symmetry where the arms and legs are sort of similar, like arms are similar, legs are similar. That can also help too, to give you a sense of it being a living thing. Like I think that's what's working here is, the repetition of these elements here. They look like bread loaves, are they? Uh, RC, I'm not sure uh, what those are, but I like them. So yeah, okay, so that's what, if you want to revise these a little bit, or a couple of them, the ones we talked about, maybe you could do that just to kind of, again, sort of, like maybe, for example, here, like this bottom is your base, and then maybe how to think about getting a sort of, maybe this element would come on top, like here with this element, and then you might have arms that come out that are the same, like maybe this element could be both your arms, and then this is your head, you know. I think once it's sort of put together more in terms of objects, it'll start reading more as a character, but just kind of keep thinking of that. Okay, Tracy, garbage dump Dan. So, with Garbage Dump Dan, you don't necessarily have to have things, that just belong in a dump, in the sense like anything really. I think any object could be sort of like garbage, like somebody throws it out. You know what I mean? So, but I understand like the idea of trash and garbage. I do think you're right in a sense that you do want to kind of convey that Garbage Dump Dan is like made out of garbage. So yeah, it's sort of like a little bit of both. But let's see here. I'm going to try to see if I can zoom this up a little bit. Oh yeah, okay, old can, bottle arm, electric cord. These are nice. I love the idea of the tire. That makes a really beautiful torso. Cardboard tube legs. That's great. What are the eyes going to be made out of? So you might want to think about that. Um, maybe maybe somebody threw out some of those those googly eyes that you shake. That's what I thought of when I looked at this. So you might want to just think about that and label it, or not if you don't want to have it. Banana arms, trash can body. Yeah, these are all cute. Yeah, again, just make sure that every object has a label and identification. Ooh, I like the movement in this. This is really cute. Traffic cone legs, that's awesome. I love that idea. Bad body, yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, you got some great ideas here. Garbage bag body. I had a student who did Garbage Dump Dan all out of garbage bags. I think so. I think that I might have it hanging around. If you want to, remind me, you could drop me an email. I might be able to dig it up. It was so interesting because I thought, how is he going to manage to make garbage bags look like a character? And he first of all, he found a really good garbage bag photograph, or maybe more than that. And then he actually used puppet warp, which we're going to learn about later, to kind of morph it so that it started getting like kind of curves and bends to make sort of more of a body. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, these are great. Yeah, so okay, so that's all you really need to do here, Tracy, is just to make sure that your eyes have objects associated with them. Okay, Iman. So, I would say sometimes the system will zip your folder for you, but in general, in this class, I would just avoid zipping your folders. I don't think there's really a need for that. And then you can put together your sketches. If you don't have Adobe Acrobat or DC, Adobe, the name for it, it's not a problem. You can always assemble your sketches or any sketch, any files in Photoshop. It actually has a feature that allows you to put together PDFs, which I love because it just saves us from having that one extra software if you don't need it. And I have directions for how to do that at the top of the thread. So what is your character? Is it going to be, looks like food, Flippin' Food Fred or Fran, one of those? Uh, let's see, cinnamon roll. Oh, okay. So brownie. Yeah, those are, those are nice things. And here, yeah, these all look like I could, flip this one so that it's straight up and down. Presentation is always something that in design, um, I learned, maybe the hard way, like most people do, is that the better your presentation, the more that your client or your art director, your boss is going to like your work. If you don't give them a nice presentation, then they you can have the most wonderful ideas in the world and execution, and they'll just sort of go, So, take some time with presentation. Put your PDF together. Orient all of your images correctly. When you photograph, try to get a nice clean photograph that is not yellow, or if this is brown paper, maybe that would work, if you're drawing a brown paper, but it's probably white paper that you had. So, maybe adjust that so it's whiter, a little lighter. I think those are really good things you can do. So but I do think your sketches are on the right track, and I would go with probably at this point, maybe this one or this one. Yeah, yeah. I found that this is, I'm not sure what this element is here. It looks almost like a piece of pizza, maybe. I found that the more form you have in your torso and really all of your objects, like shape, like three-dimensional shape, the more the character comes to life. So like a big donut body will work really well. Okay. All right, so that's it, everybody. Nice job overall, and hope you have a great end of the week putting together your final submissions for Sunday. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, I will see you next week when we get started with milestone 2 with our first, our Photoshop exercise where we're going to be looking at layers. Really good things we're looking at.